And we'll go into questions in the chat.
Well, everything's a little better today, except, you look at the game last night and you find a way to win, and that's kind of what we did. And I didn't think it was the best we played. It was one of the more physical games we've played in. We have a very short turnaround again. As you know, that's going to be the lay of the land for the last 2 weeks of the season. And all we're really looking at now is focusing in on Maryland. That's kind of what our only care is. I don't want any other distractions with them. I just want them focusing in on Maryland and looking at Maryland. They lost kind of like we did. They lost their center, Smith, and their point guard, Cowan. And it took a while for them to get going, too. They lost 3 or 4 big games early and then started winning a couple games on the road. They've got Bellin scoring, 3 guys in scoring, double figures. Ayola is getting 15 a game. Wiggins is getting 18 a game in the last 5. And Marcel, who is a very, very good player, along with Scott. Those guys do a lot of dirty work. They're not real big, but they're all 6'5", 6'6", and athletic. In the last 5 games, they've won 4 of them. Beat Rutgers last time out. They've had almost a week to prepare for us. But Rutgers' win was at Rutgers, and that was a big win. So this is a team that has played better. They've beaten some of the best teams in the league. Some of them on the road, I think Wisconsin and for sure Illinois, and not for sure who the last one was, but they've beaten enough teams on the road. They're a tournament team going in, and I think games don't get any bigger than these are for us. So we're healthy as you can be other than Foster. Practice today and didn't go real long, but we did get some things done, and I thought we did a pretty damn good job. I think turnovers will be a big key, and dribble penetration. They drive you. Have shot a lot more threes lately. I think they've made in the last 5 games 15 more threes than we have. We have gotten to the line more than they have, so I don't know if those balance out or not, but ready for some questions.
We'll start with Matt Charbonneau.
Tom, obviously we know physically how demanding these last couple of weeks are going to be for you guys. Can you speak to how it's going to be mentally challenging for them, just having big game after big game? It's kind of like a tournament approach, but do you worry about that as much as the physical stuff right now?
I talked to them a little bit about it, talked to them about fatigue is 3/4 mental, and you're saying they've had mental fatigue for 9 months, it seems like, since last summer. And but everybody's in the same boat. The time of year that at least we're on a high, that we're playing better, and I think we're more connected. I think we've gotten more physical, even though we're not as physical of a team. So I'm not worried about it. Is the game going to come when all of a sudden there's nothing left in the tank? I don't know. I don't think it will right now. They don't act like it, and yet there is a reality, both mentally and physically, to how many big games in a row can you play. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, most of the years we were in it. If you're a 1 or 2 or 3 seed, usually the opening game isn't as hard, or even the second game. But all these are difficult for us and for anybody. I mean, they're all tournament teams that are probably going to be, 10 seeds and higher. And so we do have our work cut out, but boy, just some more opportunities for us. And those opportunities so far, we've taken advantage of a couple of them. We'll see if we can continue. But just because they're not ranked, don't fool yourself. If you look at who they played and how they played, and other than a slow start, Mark Turgeon's done a good job with them. They've gotten better defensively. They've gotten better shooting the ball, and they're harder to guard because they got 5 guys. Their center, Scott, he can drive the ball and handle the ball very well and shoot threes. So he's kind of like Lindell, except maybe he even shoots it a little better from range, but definitely a little better with the ball and taking you off the dribble. So we got our work cut out, but I'm not I'm not going to worry about fatigue because there's nothing I can do about it. I can just try to practice as good, tell them to get their rest, eat well, all the things that we got to do. But the mental fatigue, I'm not crawling in their brains. So I don't see it happening right now. I think we're in a good place, and that's what I'm going to leave it at.
I mean, obviously there's been a few times over the years where you've had to have late pushes to kind of secure that tournament spot, but I don't know if any of them have looked quite like this in terms of how you're playing, the schedule you're going to face late in the season. Can you kind of pinpoint what it's been about this team that's been able to turn it around here in the last week or so that's maybe different from before?
Well, first of all, there's never been anything like this. There's only been a couple times, that we had to, win some games down the stretch. Now, there were years we had to win games to win the Big Ten, but never anything like this. And never, ever, ever will you play 4 top 5 teams in about a 10-day period or whatever it is. So that's a never. That's number one. Number two, I just keep saying it, and I'll keep saying it. What I can pinpoint is that we're healthier. I'm amazed how people, even around the country, when I listen to a few, watching some games, and why is this team playing better, and why is that team playing better? And, you do some checking, like Louisville now, it's those that have had COVID during the season. It's different than a sprained ankle, because for every kid, it lasts a little longer. Maybe they don't get as sick, and so everybody's going on that. But the fatigue factor, or the mental stress of sitting in a place for 14 days or whatever, I think that is part of it. I mean, look at the 2 guys that are playing a lot better for us, Josh and Gabe. And, I will say, sticking up for ourselves, nobody in the country that I know of, and I've talked to a lot of coaches that call me about it. I've called coaches, came back, practiced for 3 days, and played at Rutgers, at Ohio State, and at Iowa. So that can make you look worse than you are too. And as I said before, if we would have won that Purdue game before we went into COVID, I think we would have looked at it a little differently. That doesn't mean when we came back, we would have been ready to face those kind of teams. With Josh, I think in those 3 games, he was 20-some% from the field, and now he's just a different player. And Gabe was a week later than Josh, and completely different player. So that's all I can come up with, Matt. And it might have been other things. I don't know, but that's what I come up with.
We'll go next to Kyle Austin.
You mentioned last night how happy you were with your leaders kind of being leaders during the team. And I know, a month or 2 ago, you wanted to see some more out of them. How have they kind of turned things around, you think, from a leadership perspective on this team?
Well, Aaron's had to do a lot more just with his play. And, but Frosty, because he's been hurt, it's been interesting, because he's kind of been like a coach. He even comes by in meetings and stuff. And the job he's done for Rocket and AJ, and trying to help them figure out, what they got to do, how they got to do it, has been unbelievable. But Joshua has been the guy in the locker room, and he's been the guy at the end of practice, at the beginning of practice. He's just taken his leadership. You're right. I wasn't pleased with it. I mean, why mince words? I didn't think it was very good at all. But, a month and a half ago, we were dealing with, number one, the COVID situation. Number two, no breaks over Christmas, where we usually get better. There were a lot of reasons. And I just think that he has taken a step up, and that usually happens with seniors, especially one that never thought he was going to play this year. I mean, a year ago at this time, he was 1,000,000-to-1 shot. Didn't even know if he was going to come back. Give his father a lot of credit too, because his father called me and we talked about it. And I think we almost had to encourage Josh. I mean, how many letdowns can you have? And so, what he's gone through, I think, has made him stronger, as they say. And he's leading this team now. As I sent him a text last night. I said, hey, you're becoming one of our great leaders. because he's had to do it through some times that are a little tougher than some other guys went through. And I'm really proud of him for that, to be honest.
We'll go next to Chris Solari.
Hey, Tom, along those lines with Foster, I guess, where's he at physically in terms of that shoulder right now? And looking at how your team's playing, and you've talked about it over the years about reintegrating someone after an injury like that. How do you kind of foresee his role moving forward here? Or do you kind of just let him rest until it gets to be 100% at this point?
Well, first of all, I'm not worried about integrating him. It's different than, when Nick Ward was here. I mean, Foster has played so many different roles. He was starting at the end, and, people shouldn't get fooled that, we've won some games. We've won some games because Gabe and Josh have played at a different level. I mean, last night, our point guards did not play very well. I think you'd all agree with that. Did not shoot very well. And I think Frosty could have helped that a lot. But I think the bigger problem is his arm. And we talked today, there'll be some decisions made on whether he does need surgery. And if he does, would it be sooner rather than later? So right now we're in the consulting stage with doctors and specialists. And if he could play, he'd play. And when he says he can't play, and that started a couple, games before it was bad, I know that it's a problem. And, what the MRI showed, it might be hard to come back. So if he does, it would be a bonus for us if he comes back, in a week. But the way it happened and what happened, where it actually popped out, I guess, things are not looking good that he will be able to. So believe it or not, that'll hurt us a little bit. There's times that we really need him, and he's been able to play a role where he's played 15 minutes a game. He's played 25 minutes a game. And we'll just see, but it'll be a couple days. Specialists, doctors, everybody's going to look. He might even try to shoot tomorrow just to see where it's at. Because if he could play, he'd wait and have surgery after the season, but that might not be a possibility. And he's going to just talk to his family, and we're talking to doctors, and we're talking to him.
You've talked so much about that, the head of the team being, the head of the snake at that spot. I guess at this point, with the basically, I think 4 guys now that you're kind of rotating around there between Rocket and AJ. And I mean, it gives you some diversity though in different looks that you can get. But what would you prefer, I guess, right now? One guy, or just kind of mix and match as you go?
Well, since I know Foster's out, I'd prefer that Rocket play to the level I know he could play. The Tuesday night, I thought he was awesome. Defensively, offensively, did some things, got other people involved. It wasn't a great night for him last night. We just had a meeting with him 10 minutes ago, and he agrees. So, it's figuring out why, and it's figuring out how to settle that, because we're not going to be good enough if we don't get solid play out of that position. And we really need a guy that can defend. I mean, when guys driving around him, I knew that it wasn't his night. And I, like I said, I think he agreed. I think he gets bummed out when that happens, and just got to learn how to deal with it, like other people have to learn how. But what my preference would be is if Rocket can play like he did Tuesday and keep improving in that area like the others have, like Gabe has and everybody else, then I think we could go from maybe a really good team to maybe even a little bit better. And that would be, the easiest. Then you have some subs, but moving people around isn't always the greatest. I've done it with Ellen Anderson and different people back in the day, and, still played, remember even playing Kelvin Torbert at the point once and playing him at the 4 once. And that was a pretty good team that went to a Final Four. So it's not that it can't happen where you can move people around, but it's a lot more stressful on me, probably on them, and probably on you guys trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing. But trust me when I say this, if they do their job, everything will work out.
We'll go next to Lindsay Huddleston.
Thanks. Hey, Tom, staying with the theme of your leaders, Foster and Josh, can you foresee a time going forward with this generation of athletes that you can start just focusing on a few players to develop them as leaders, and they can go out and be the people that can deal with those other issues that come up, as opposed to struggling with players across the board? You just focus on those who have those leadership traits and let them be the go-between going forward?
Well, probably when the year's over, you're the guy I should be talking to, because I think that's what this is all about now. I don't think we're developing leaders, meaning in high school, and parents and teachers aren't allowed. Nobody's allowed to tell anybody they didn't do the right thing, or tell anybody to get people to do a better job. You know, leaders have to call out people. Leaders have to be able to handle themselves in a way that I think we do have to do a better job in developing them. I don't think it's easy. It's hard to take a real quiet guy and make him a leader. But if I've learned one thing in the last 3-4 years, we, probably all of us, have to do a better job of that with our own kids, with our players. And, you know, even in society, if you look at things go awry if you don't have good leadership. And, you know, we've seen that in a lot of different other areas than sports. So I think that is something that I have to do a better job of this spring, summer, and fall, and probably moving forward. You know, you just always kind of settle with, you know, leaders are kind of more made, are kind of more born than made. And that's a cop-out on my part. So I got to do a better job of that, to be honest. And I think you're right on the right path. And I'm going to try to do that.
All right. Thank you for that, Tom.
Thanks.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go first to Nick Mantis.
Coach, as you were just mentioning about leadership, and you could kind of hear or kind of see from Aaron, his leadership keeps on being a big quality in the way in which he's motivating guys and always being on guys, you know, on and off the court. What ways we not only look to him, but to, you know, other leaders on this team as you guys move forward throughout this last gauntlet of a stretch?
Well, like I said, some guys can lead, you know, on Monday, Tuesday, and maybe Saturday and Sunday, but to be a great leader, you got to lead 7 days a week. And that's kind of what we're trying to develop into. Frosty has really done a good job of that, because he can see it from the outside in now. You know, you can see it from the coach's side instead of the player's side when you're sitting there every day. And he's been, you know, if someone's going to turn into a good leader, it's him. Aaron has tried to do it, but he's got so much else on the plate, and he's done a pretty good job. And Josh has done the best, I think, because, you know, he's at the back against the wall stage of your life, and as far as this part of his life, and he knows there's no tomorrows. And, you know, so Josh was a kind of a quiet kid when he got here. And back to Lindsay's question, you know, I think he's developed into one. I'm not sure I did enough to help him develop into one, maybe a little bit, but I think a lot has been him. And so if I can learn from Josh and find out how could I do a better job, because it is a quality that you have to have on a team most of the time. And we're getting that. I think that's one of the other reasons we're becoming a better team than we were. You know, it's really been fun to watch.
One quick follow-up, if I could. You were mentioning how Josh has a little bit of a back against the wall mentality. As I'm sure all of us have written or spoken about on TV this past couple of weeks, this entire team has a back against the wall mentality. Did that ever kind of go into the locker room at all? Do you just kind of tell the guys, this is it, you got to show up right now?
You know, I told them the opposite, if you want the truth. I said, don't worry about the streaks. You know, there's a lot of streaks. I mean, everybody's made known of all my streaks, you know, losing seasons, losing Big Ten, NCAA tournament. I mean, I don't know, a lot of them. I mean, I've heard games pass me by, and, you know, those are the normal things that happen when you lose some games. So what I told them is I addressed the white elephant a week ago, and that's that all these things are on the line. But I also said that you play to get better each game, and you can't worry about streaks. Every record's made to be broken. Everyone in the world is made to be broken. You know, the ones they say that'll never be broken, all of a sudden it's broken, you know? So, you know, win, lose or draw, I want this team to go out knowing that they gave it their best shot. And like I said, I'm not an excuse guy, but when I look at the TV and I hear people say, well, why are they playing better? I just shake my head and say, you know, what does that idiot do for a living? You know, has he done his homework? Does he watch? Does he see? Does he know? And some of it should go on the coach. You know, he didn't do a good enough job, but some of it should go with the reality of what this year's been like. And you know, we picked a bad year to be one of the teams that gets COVID in the middle of the Big Ten, a bad year to maybe not be quite as good a team as we've been over the quite a few years, because the damn league's so good. And that's another thing, you know, they talk about all these other leagues. And, you know, somebody gave me a stat last night that I did appreciate. I think all 14 teams have a top 20 strength of schedule. I mean, that's impossible to happen. That could never happen in a million years. Never happened since I've been in this league. And it just shows you how good the league is. So you add some things up, and it's easy to see why you can struggle in certain stretches. You know, you play certain games. But I have not put the pressure on this team that, you know, there's been a couple of years I said, you want to be the first team not to go to a Final Four in a 4-year period, because I thought that team could handle it in a situation. There's been a couple teams, but there's been 2 teams. One of them really good players too, Miles Bridges freshman year. When I talked about it at Nebraska, I said, you know what, get that pressure off your back. Play to get better every game. And that's what I told this team. Don't worry about streaks. Don't worry about streaks. Worry about putting yourself in a position where a team gets better, you get better, and then let the chips fall where they may. And that's been the battle cry for me.
Thank you,
We'll
Coach.
wrap it up. We'll wrap it up with one from Chris Solari.
You kind of touched on where I was going to head to over the past year. I mean, it was a year ago that you guys went down to Maryland, needing that win to be in contention for the Big Ten title. And I guess, what lesson can that provide for this team? You know, the back's against the wall for that, but also kind of a broader question. What is for you guys as a staff and a program in the year since then? How has everything with the shutdown and last year with the goals that you had affected them, maybe having last year's tournament shut down and still having that in their mind?
Yeah, you know, it was disappointing to have last year's tournament, because I think you'd all agree we were playing our best basketball at the end, and everybody acts like that's what we do. That's not what we do. You know, last year, hey, we lost some games early. I mean, we dealt with something last year that was worse than this in a way, because it actually did affect an individual life and death. You know, I mean, these could potentially, it has with an assistant coach, but it hasn't with any players. And that one did. And, you know, we did talk about what we went through last year as far as winning on the road at Penn State, winning on the road, and, you know, never giving up, never quitting. There's always a chance until the last game. And I don't know if that helps us. Some of those guys lived it. I know this, they were disappointed that they couldn't play in the tournament last year. But just think about the difference, what you're saying. Then it was to try to win a Big Ten championship. Now it's to try to get into the tournament. It's different. But I think you can use some of those situations that you had to win, and you had to play your best, and you had to find a way. And, you know, we went into Maryland and played really well. We went into Penn State and we're down 100-2 or whatever it was, you know, and came back and won. It wasn't all Cassius and Xavier. A lot of these guys had a lot to do with it. And ironically, I think it was at Maryland, one of the two was at Illinois for sure. Rocket Watts, you know, was the hero down the stretch. So it wasn't just Cassius or Xavier. And, oh, that's kind of what we're looking to do. You know, we're trying to look to play our best. And I didn't think last night we played our best. I didn't think Ohio State played their best. I thought, we took away some of their strengths and they probably took away some of ours, and that's what's going to happen. And so the game doesn't look as pretty. Against Illinois, I thought we played pretty well the whole game. Can we duplicate that? At Maryland last year, we played well the whole game. Penn State, we played well half the game. You're playing with dynamite, though, if you don't get ready for the whole game at this time of year and the hole we've dug, or that's been dug for us, either way you want to look at it.
Coach, that's all the questions that we have for you. Appreciate
Well, I
you taking-
appreciate it, guys. It'll be a good weekend. Sorry you won't be there, but I don't think they let anybody in. I heard they might not even let the teams in there out in Maryland, but we're going to try to get something done and one way or another, come back and try to get ready for another game with a quick turnaround, Sunday, play Tuesday. And that's been interesting too, because it has been an hellacious schedule, not only in who we play, but when we're playing them. But some of it's been fun too. You can just prepare every night. You never have to worry about, we don't have a game for a week. And some of that is good news, and that's what we're trying to make it good news. So guys, have a good weekend.
Everybody, we are joined by Josh Langford. Josh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. If we could go with questions through the chat, we'll get started with Josh. And we'll go first to Lindsay Huddleston.
Thanks. Hey, Josh, we've
up?
been having a praise session about you and your leadership the last 48 hours, rightfully so. We talk about how great you're leading, but tell us the challenge of leading your peers. Tell us what you have to go through that's not so easy when it comes down to calling your players out, as Coach Izzo says, but still being able to, keep their relationship intact, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I mean, I think that the two biggest things for me is one is finding that balance of leading them, but also reminding myself that I have to lead myself as well, because I can't expect somebody to follow me if I'm not living what I'm talking about. So I think having that balance within that, making time for myself and making sure that I'm in the right mental space before I try to go help somebody get in the right mental space, especially when it's when it's to your peers. And then also the second part is the fact that, you're trying to lead somebody that's basically your age. And so sometimes that may get uncomfortable because you get familiar with them. And sometimes that familiarity, it'll kind of make you hesitant to hold them accountable or to tell them, or not tell them, but give them constructive criticism. Because one thing that coaches, he really harps on when he discusses leadership is the fact that great leaders are able to hold others accountable. And he always talks about how it's not easy for people to hold others accountable because a lot of people, they don't want to deal with conflict, because usually when you hold somebody accountable, you can expect conflict to come right after that. And a lot of people aren't, comfortable with conflict. So I think those two things have really been challenging for me, but it's also stretching me, and I'm learning a lot, and I definitely can see myself maturing.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Matt Charbonneau.
Josh, we know these last couple of weeks are going to be tough physically with the amount of games, not a lot of downtime. What about mentally? Is it challenging for you guys mentally to be ready each night, or do you think this season, the way it's gone, is it's been tough already mentally? That's kind of prepared you for this stretch.
Yeah, I think this whole season has been a challenge, and I think the stretch that we have coming up right now is just another part of what's already been challenging for us. And so, I mean, to some degree, I think being with having to deal with this season has prepared us for some of the mental challenges that we have within the season. Like, we would have to deal with this probably even if we weren't in the the COVID situation. So I think the COVID situation is actually helping us be more mentally prepared and more mentally competent to be able to deal with the kind of the stretches that we're dealing with right now in terms of having to play these games back to back like that.
And for you individually, we saw the way you played Tuesday with 16 rebounds. We see last night you hitting big shots late in the game, making defensive plays. Is part of this just you getting to that point of realizing it's now or never, kind of that whole back against the wall thing, and you guys don't have any more room for error at this point that has kind of brought that out of you guys?
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's also just timing is everything too. You have to really, if you kind of put it in perspective, this wasn't a normal season, and a lot of to coaches' defense, and then even to our defense, not to make excuses for us, we was just trying to figure out our team still a little bit, and I think we really have found our niche. And we've kind of hit it the right timing for us, and I think everything is clicking, and I feel like everybody's really on the same page in terms of being connected, like Coach has already really been harping on, and also having a good attitude.
We'll go next to Chris Solari.
I just kind of want to run back that block that you had last night. First of all, did you hear from Kyle Arns about it at all?
Yeah, he texted me. He texted me this morning, actually.
What
it was like, man, that was a great block. Yeah. Huh?
He wasn't at the game, right?
I'm not sure. I think
Yes,
he
he
may have
was.
been. He was?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, he was at the game.
So what did he say?
He was just saying how great of a block that was.
You realize that was his brother too, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, from that standpoint, in that game, one, how important was it at that point after they had that 9-0 run to get that play and prevent a longer run? And for you, I don't think you had made a shot up until that point. How much did that help give you the push down the stretch?
I think it definitely gave us a boost as a whole, group, and definitely me. And then just kind of running myself. If I go back to that play, I was just like, I have to make sure that he doesn't get this easy layup, because it's just going to put us even deeper into a hole. And so I think that just kind of gave everybody a spark, including myself.
And I asked Coach about this. You talked about what this season and the stoppage and COVID and everything else has done. Coming from last year, when you guys were playing so well down the stretch, how much are you still maybe trying to process that and the summer that followed that really has kind of been an abnormal time for everybody, including especially you guys that are used to the rhythm?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a struggle. I mean, when you see where you were and then you kind of compare where you were to where you're at right now, sometimes that can be hard, especially when where you were, you feel like you were progressing better than where you're at now. And, you know, I think the biggest thing for us, and that we've kind of just come to the conclusion as a whole, is that, you know, that's in the past. We can't necessarily get that time back. And so what we have to do is take advantage of the time that we have now, because that's the opportunity that's in front of us. And so I think we've been doing a pretty good job of it. And I definitely see our growth, and, you know, things are really moving forward for us.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll go first to Zach Sudanek.
Hi, Josh. With all of this coming up and all of these top opponents you guys have played and coming up, how do you, I know Coach has talked about trying to keep opportunities with this, but how do you focus on one game at a time?
Did you finish the question?
Sorry. How do you guys, with all this stretch coming up, how do you kind of keep that in focus at one game at a time?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely hard. But, you know, that's the mentality that you know, that you should have, and that we're trying to constantly remind ourselves that we need to have, because you don't want to get too far, you know, ahead of yourself and take yourself out of the present moment, because when you're not in the present moment, you can't really give your fullest potential. And so every day, just we all have to remind each other, and we all have to just keep, you know, telling each other that, hey, you know, every day we have to win the day. Every day we have to come in and just give 110%, you know, not just for the games, but for practices, you know, for meetings, film sessions, weightlifting sessions. You know, every day we have to give all we have.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Kyle Austin and then wrap it up with one from Dalton Shetler.
Hey, Josh, Coach Israel was just telling us how he told you guys to really not to worry about the streak and just kind of try to get better every game. But I'm wondering, you know, the streak's such a big part of this program and its history. Are you able to not worry about it? Do you try not to worry about it? How do you kind of think about it?
I mean, I think as a human, I mean, you're naturally going to think about it, but it's really just something that you just, you know, is there. I mean, you can't change it. The biggest thing is that we just constantly readjust our focus and realign, you know, our perspective on, you know, what's really at hand and what we need to be looking at. And, you know, that's taking it one game at a time. And, you know, one thing that Coach has really emphasized is he talks about how streaks are meant to be broken, not saying that he wants to break the streak, but the message is that it can't be about results. It has to be about the process and progressing and getting better each and every day. And I think, you know, when you have that type of mindset, the results that you want to see will come, but you can't be so results driven. And, you know, that's kind of been our approach.
And then we'll wrap it up with one from Dalton Shetler.
Hey, Josh, I wanted to ask a little bit too, because obviously you guys have changed things a bit in terms of lineup, and offensively things are different for you. Ironically enough, as you guys have kind of went smaller in these last two wins, you guys only hit 4 3-pointers in each of these 2 top 5 wins. What do you credit the offensive success to, that since you went smaller, it's not outside shots getting it done, it's still attacking the paint?
Yeah, I think, you know, just us moving the ball and just trying to not necessarily do too much, but really focus on, you know, creating those weak side closeouts. And I think that's really been opening up things for us. And the biggest thing is I think we're just more connected. And sometimes, you know, offensively and also defensively, chemistry plays a big part. And I think that we're just finding who we are, and then, you know, we just sharing the ball.
Josh, that's all we have for you. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Max.